All right, welcome. So this video is exercise is medicine, healing your body with movement. This video is all about why exercise is so important for your body and for your health, and why you can actually heal a lot of things that you struggle with just through movement and just through exercise, right? So a list of these things would be chronic tension, hypertension, anxiety, depression, chronic fatigue, inflammation, and many other examples as well. But a lot of these health complications that we face and that we struggle with as human beings can be fixed through exercise. And then if exercise doesn't fix it, diet is very likely to do so as well. So anything that we can't fix through exercise, typically we can address through diet. With that being said, exercise and movement is very, very important when it comes to being healthy, being stable in your body, right? Having energy, having good energy, and as well as just having strong and capable muscles to make sure that you're not easily able to get injured by certain things, right? So if you work in a field that is physical, typically you will build a lot more muscle and you will be a lot stronger, a lot more durable. And for those who don't put in the activity, who aren't lifting, who aren't moving their bodies, running, building strength, building functionality, building mobility, well, they're going to struggle a lot when it comes to any form of heavy lifting. They're more likely to get injuries if they do play sports or even in the workplace. So being healthy, being strong, being fit is very important. And when it comes to your health, right, inflammation is a big problem a lot of people face. Chronic stress, chronic anxiety, these things can all be dealt with through exercise and through the right forms of exercise. So that is why it's so important and why we need to incorporate exercise. So this video is just going to teach you exactly how you can incorporate exercise in such a way that can help you to increase your health and make sure your body is fit, healthy, and not dying on you. Really is kind of the goal here. We don't want our bodies to decay, deteriorate, and fail too soon for us to fully live our lives. And that is one of the main goals with exercise, is longevity, is making sure that we can use our bodies throughout our lives instead of, getting to a certain point where we can't use our bodies anymore and we can't actually interact with the world. Because without being able to actually go out, interact with the world, feel stable and fit and comfortable in your own body, it's going to be very difficult to live your life and enjoy life at that rate. The first section here is sedation is killing you, right? This concept is very, very accurate, right? Sedation, being sedentary, being lazy, not moving, not being active, not living an active lifestyle, is killing you, right? The reality of this is that when we are still, when we are not moving our bodies, when we are not using our bodies, we are not growing. When we are stagnant in our lives, we are not growing, we are not evolving, right? And the result of not growing and evolving is deterioration, decay, and eventually death. So when we are not moving, very, very slowly, a lot of people might think I'm being morbid here, you won't notice this process, but very, very slowly you will start to die. And I'm not saying if you go and you sit on the couch for an hour, you're going to die. I'm saying that if your lifestyle is of sedation, is of being on the couch on TikTok all day, watching movies all day, you're not going to the gym, you're not exercising. If you do work, it's not active work, right? You're not moving your body, you're not working at a standing desk, you're not doing these things that help to keep you in an active state. And you do this over a long period of time, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years in some cases, right? This is what I'm referring to as sedation. This is what I mean by sedation will kill you, is if you sustain it over a long enough period of time, you will eventually notice yourself deteriorate. You will notice your health deteriorate. You will notice your mind and your mental health deteriorate. So you don't want to be sedentary. You don't want to live in sedation. You want to have an active lifestyle. You want to be moving as much as possible. You want to be working. You want to be exercising. You want to be going on walks, doing all of these things that will help you to stay stable, stay healthy, stay fit, and just be able to enjoy life, right? You want to be able to feel good doing certain things, right? If you're a parent and you want to go take your kids to Disney World, but you can't walk long enough to sustain a trip to Disney World, you completely eliminate the ability to enjoy these things because of how painful and difficult it is to do the basic activity of walking, for example. Versus the parent who's fit, who's healthy, who takes their kid to Disney World and is literally dragging their kids through Disney World, not the other way around, right? This is at least one of my goals personally, if I was to have kids, I want to be able to take them personally through all of the experiences that I deem fun and important. And if I'm not healthy, if I'm not fit, and I'm not able to do so, I won't be able to be as fulfilled as a parent. The other extent of it is if you have any goals that have anything to do with fitness or being an athlete, or even if you have work-related goals, your brain's health is derived from your exercise and your body's health, right? So if you are not exercising, your brain will not be healthy. Your brain needs this movement to clear and process energy. So you need to be moving as far as business goes as well. But if your goal is to be an athlete, if you want to be a business owner, if you want to be successful in some area, but you can't use your body to its fullest, or your mind is overwhelmed by all of the stress, all of the anxiety, all of the energy and information you're taking in, and not given a proper outlet to process all of that, you will just block your ability to progress, to enjoy these things, to really live life to its fullest. And that's kind of the idea here. That's the whole point, is exercise is important because without it, we don't really get to live our lives to the fullest. So the next section is the secret that Big Pharma doesn't want you to know. And obviously this sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it's not actually that much of a conspiracy. The reality is that Big Pharma, or the idea of the medical industry feeding medications to people for symptoms, this whole concept is flawed simply because of the fact that by feeding somebody a medication to cure a symptom, we remove the symptom without removing the root cause. And as many know, when it comes to problems in life, if we turn our heads away from the problem, it doesn't go away. It actually grows, becomes bigger, and becomes worse. So you can see this in the example of people who grow old on medications, right? It starts with one minor issue, one minor health complication, but then it starts to continuously progress until it's so bad that they're on 10 to 20 different medications, all of which are only making the problem worse because it's only facing and solving the symptom. If we cure and solve the symptom, but we don't identify and work through the actual problem or the root cause of that symptom, it will continue to grow, continue to get worse over time. So what we actually want to do about this is we want to look at it from a different perspective. When we have a symptom, when we have a problem, we don't want to look at the symptom and find the easiest way to get rid of that symptom. What we want to do is we want to look at the root cause of that symptom so that we can, like I said, identify that root cause, and then we can actually overcome or work through that specific root cause. So in a lot of cases, a lot of people are dealing with chronic inflammation. A lot of the health complications people in old age are dealing with right now are due to chronic inflammation, which is as simple as removing inflammatory foods from our diet and exercising. These two things together will actually help us to work through and actually remove a lot of this inflammation, right? And that is key. Removing the inflammation removes the root cause, and therefore all of the symptoms that would follow are no longer a problem. They're no longer going to be an issue for us. So we want to identify the root cause and work through the root cause. And so this is why I say the secret Big Pharma doesn't want you to know is that our bodies actually need movement and proper nutrition over medication. If we don't have those two things in place first, medication isn't really the best option to go for, simply because of the fact that most of these symptoms can be simply solved by exercise and proper nutrition. And so this isn't to shit on medication or the medical industry. This is to say that before we look at getting on medications, we want to look at making sure we have a healthy lifestyle, because a lot of the symptoms we face and deal with can be solved through a healthy lifestyle. And the reason I say Big Pharma doesn't want you to know this is simply because it's a business, right? They operate as a business, and so they're not going to tell you that there's a free option that might be more effective. Their job is to sell you the medication. So when you are looking at these things, you don't want to immediately go towards the first medication option. You want to look at the actual root cause and see if there's a way you can solve it yourself, or even if it's not something you can solve yourself, but solve naturally and more efficiently than through medication. And if that's not the case, then you may turn to medication. But you don't want to turn to medication early, because exercise can actually help us to overcome a lot of the health complications we face. But to add a nuance to this conversation, if you are at a certain age, or if you are at a certain point in this deterioration, and if you are at a certain level of health complications. Exercise isn't going to be a magic fix. But if you start exercising now, you will see improvements. So that doesn't mean there's no point in doing it, but it's going to be difficult for people to completely avoid medications if it's already so bad. However, those who start to adopt a healthy lifestyle early enough in life and maintain it throughout their lifetime, you can prevent yourself from dealing with a lot of these health complications. And so that's why I teach this stuff a lot, is because if we know this stuff, if we are applying it, and it's very simple stuff, right? I'm saying eat healthy and exercise every day. With these two things, we can actually avoid a lot of the health complications that plague people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s right now. So, healing your body through movement and exercise. So how do we actually begin healing our bodies through movement and exercise? So the main thing that we have to understand as far as healing our bodies through exercise is the effect it has on our nervous system. So a lot of the health complications that we face start with either a tension or an overabundance of energy or a lack of energy in the nervous system. So it means that we are distributing our energy throughout our nervous system improperly in one capacity or another. Now, the reason why movement and exercise is so effective is because it is an outlet for stuck nervous energy. An example is anxiety. Anybody who faces anxiety, my girlfriend is a perfect example of this, right? She had anxiety, and what we did was we started running. She started doing it on her own, and then from that point, she's been able to actually heal that anxiety and release that energy, that stuck energy that causes the feeling of anxiety. By moving more and getting consistent exercise, we can actually start to release this energy and learn how to properly circulate our nervous energy. And the reason why this is such a big impact on our ability to heal our body is because we can actually start to move and process this nervous energy that is getting stuck, that is then causing this adverse health condition. And if you think about it, our bodies were never actually meant to be still. Our bodies were never meant to completely stop, right? Rest is one thing, but actually just stopping and becoming sedentary is a completely different thing. And our bodies weren't made for this, right? Our bodies were made for movement, for growth, right? And so therefore we need to make sure that we're constantly applying the right stimulus for our body to grow and adapt in the right way. And by applying the right stimulus to our bodies, we are able to grow and adapt and evolve in such a way that makes us stronger, more capable. Exercise is very important for the immune system and immune health. It's very important for gut health and gut functionality. So all of these things lead to our bodies functioning properly, which prevents the adverse health conditions that we're worried about facing at some point in the future. So another thing that we can talk about is muscle repair and rebuilding. A lot of people, when they get injuries, they think avoid exercise and avoid movement, but this isn't actually true, right? When we get injuries, and of course a muscle injury doesn't mean we're going to go and bench 225 again tomorrow. If we were to get a pec injury, we're not going to go and bench 225 tomorrow. But what the mistake here is completely removing all forms of movement and all forms of exercise. At the end of this last snowboarding season, I got a knee injury. Now, it wasn't completely debilitating, but it was bad enough that it was very painful to walk, very difficult to walk. What I didn't do was stop walking, however. What I did do was I started walking on the treadmill more consistently. I started doing incline walking on the treadmill to slowly build back muscle and strength within my knee. Backwards walking is also really good for the knees, so I was practicing that. And the idea is to bring awareness into the place that is injured and damaged and slowly but surely repair and rebuild that muscle group. I'm not going to be going and squatting 225 right after that knee injury, but I am going to be walking as much as I can. I'm going to be doing body weight squats to rebuild and reestablish muscle in that area. I'm going to be doing isometric squats to build muscle in the joint and to strengthen the joint. And you're going to be doing specific exercises that aren't going to overload the muscle. If it is injured, you don't want to overload it and cause new injuries, but you don't want to completely stop. You want to have just a low enough threshold that you are still able to build some level of strength back, and then eventually you will get back to 100% and you'll be able to go back to lifting properly. But during the period of recovery, you don't want to just completely stop. You want to do the bare minimum of what you can. Now, if you break your legs, you're not going to be walking on the treadmill in order to heal that injury for obvious reasons. But What I would say is still find a way to exercise, still find a way to get movement in, because this will keep your body primed for it. And therefore, when you are ready to begin walking again and begin working with those muscles again, you won't be completely thrown off. You won't be completely behind because you still stayed active, right? If you don't stay active at all, it's going to be very difficult to build that momentum back. So, for example, if you're in a wheelchair and you're just stuck in a wheelchair, like, roll yourself around in the wheelchair and get a slight upper body exercise and a slight upper body workout in order to make sure that you are still getting some form of movement in, getting some form of exercise in, even if you can't use your legs. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is mental health, right? It isn't the main thing, but mental health is very important. And when it comes to exercise is actually one of the most important factors in having good mental health. So we need to be exercising, moving our bodies in order to have a healthy mind. Why is this? One of the main reasons is that sedentation is a negative, right? Sedentation is a negative state. When we are not moving, when we are not active, this is a form of depression. So this is a stimulus. This is a stimulus for your brain to react with a lower state. When you are not moving, your brain automatically associates that with some form of depression or something being wrong, and therefore it lowers your mental state. Your mental health gets worse the less you move. Movement, however, is the opposite. When we're moving, when we're active, our brain associates this with being alive, being full of life, full of energy, and that is a positive to our brain, and so it does increase our mental health. The other thing is that by exercising, we upregulate all of the rest of our bodily functions. So, for example, blood flow and our gut's functionality and health, both of which increase mental health. 97% of our neurons are in our gut. So with gut inflammation and poor gut health, we actually do decrease our mental health. And blood flow means that we are able to get proper blood flow to our brain, and so therefore it can actually operate better. Both of these two things are another reason why it increases our mental health and makes us a little bit more stable in the mind. And exercise itself is just fun, and it's an outlet for energy and tension and stress, and so therefore it can actually relieve the mind of these things. The final example is a slightly lesser one, but for those who find presence and flow within exercise, it can actually increase your mental health by the fact that it does make you more present. By being more present, you do increase mental health. So for those who become very present, very focused during exercise, this can also be a positive just by the fact that it's something that makes you present, and presence is one of the main influences on mental health. So the next thing I have is nervous system regulation and energy levels. So we already talked somewhat about the nervous system regulation and the idea that by exercising consistently, we actually give ourselves an outlet to process stuck nervous energy, therefore relieving tension and relieving blockages within our system. This is one thing. But by exercising more consistently, we also actually increase our energy levels. Our nervous system becomes trained on its ability to move more energy at once and to direct more energy at once. And therefore, because we learn to concentrate this energy and move this energy in such a way, we increase the amount of energy that we have access to throughout the day. And this is an over time type of thing. If you're exercising every day, you will slowly notice that you will start to have more and more energy during the day. And as far as nervous system regulation goes, the movement itself within exercise is going to actively move energy, and therefore you will be able to start releasing stuck energy in the body if you have tension. You'll also be able to increase energy in your nervous system if you have low energy. Both will happen through exercise, because by exercising, you're basically forcing your body into a hyperactive state, and therefore it becomes more active, right? You notice your heart starts to beat faster, your blood flow increases, you do feel that nervous energy moving if you're a little bit more in tune. If you're not as in tune, you will feel that you are more focused, right? So all of these things are upregulated when we are exercising, and by putting our bodies in this state, it is actually very healing for our body to process all of this nervous energy, to move it all, and to release that stress. And it is also an optimal state for our bodies to be in, because if you think of the idea of growth within a sport or within a business, when we are in the state of optimal performance, that is when the most growth can happen. Same as for our body. When our body is in that state of optimal performance, when we are in the state that we access when we do exercise, this upregulates every function of our body and brain, therefore making us feel more alive, more aware, and having more energy. And this will increase our mental health, and this is also something that our bodies need in order to stay in a healthy state. So the last section here is proper recovery to prevent injury and muscle dysfunction. So this is really key right here. We need to have recovery as a part of our exercise routine. So whether that's a daily yoga routine, or we stretch after a workout, before a workout, or at the end of our days, we need to have some form of effective recovery. Now, stretching and yoga are great. Ice baths are also great. Saunas are great. And rest and good sleep is also really, really great. So all of these things are very important. The ones I want to focus on are stretching and yoga, things that create a level of flexibility, mobility, and strength in the body. This is why I like exercise-based yoga. So if we're trying to build strength and flexibility and mobility and functionality in the muscles that we have, we want to be stretching out any tension points. We want to be releasing those tension points. Anybody who has back pain in their older years, this is the result of not stretching enough. This is the result of not having a loose enough back. Or a strong enough core. That's the other thing. You have to have a strong core and a loose back, right? So you need to stretch and you need to build strength at the same time. Now, we are trying to ideally prevent injuries, right? Because if we are recovering consistently, our bodies are more primed for lifting, for exercise. If we have this functional strength, it makes it less likely for us to get injured when we're lifting, when we're doing things like that, or if we play a sport. So we want to be stretching in order to prevent these potential injuries. And we don't want to have any form of muscle dysfunction. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is a lack of mobility, right? A lack of ability to move in a natural movement for a human body. And also if we have too much tension, or if we don't have enough strength in certain areas of our bodies. Let's say if we're playing a sport, we don't have the right faculties to access in order to be able to use good technique, in order to be able to lift the right amount of weight. I'm a snowboarder, so I do tricks like 360s, 540s, 720s. If I want to be able to do 720s, if I want to be able to do corks and flips, these things require a level of core strength and a level of core stability and a level of muscle control that requires me to have no muscle dysfunction anywhere in my body. So you want to be utilizing recovery in order to prevent muscle dysfunction and to prevent yourself from being able to get injuries when you are exercising, when you are training, or if you play a sport. Now, that is all I have for this video. I hope you guys did enjoy, and if you did, leave a comment down below and let me know anything you may have learned, anything that was valuable that you took away from the video. I always love to read those. If you want to see more content like this, you could press subscribe, and you could also check out my TikTok and Instagram, both of which are linked in the description below. And if you want to, and you enjoyed the video, and you watched this far, definitely just leave a like, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.